So I'm back to the drawing board. I need something that can handle a large volume of air, a fair amount of pressure, and a large volume of dust and debris and sawdust and wood chips. So I happen to have this trash can that we're not using. It says Rubbermaid on it. It looks like a roughneck, but I don't think it's nearly as heavy duty. But it will serve my purposes. So I have the ruler this edge on the center of the pin, and over here to the inside edge of the router bit, it's right on 11 inches. So with any luck, this should give me a circle of 22 inches. The inside of the bucket is 20.5 inches. I don't want to consume an entire piece of plywood. Cut the inside ring, so I think I'm going to do it in a series of short segments. So I just put together a simple little widget with the all anchored here, and I can sweep this arc like so. And I turned it around and I put a similar mark out here. So I measured from here to here and it was 20.5 inches. For simplicity, I just swept out the same arc for a 20.5 inch diameter. And what that means is I don't have a perfect arc segment. I can just cut one arc and then that arc will be the outer arc for the next one. Drilled some holes, screwed it down. It does fit pretty nicely. So it took about a half hour of rasping, but I could get this piece in. That's for sure I can get it out now. It doesn't fit easily, but it's good. I don't want to make it much bigger than I had to. So I'm thinking it'll sit something like that. I might put a screw on the inside, and then it'll be just a matter of trying to find a way to firmly attach this. Thinking about using duct tape or chewing gum. So I have the two ports installed. This one's screwed in, it needs to be caulked. This one got a giant gap there. There's a screw holding it in place, and there's the inside. Well, here's the baffle for the Thien separator. I made this distance about 1.25 inches. Seemed to be a good size, just using my eyeballs as a gauge. I kind of goofed up cutting the initial circle, but luckily the goofs are in an area where I'm cutting the cutout out of the baffle. So the trade-off with the size of the slot is the smaller the slot is, the more cyclonic action you're going to get, possibly the greater the separation. The downside is the smaller the ports, the more likely they can be to clog up. And when dealing with something like a planer, if you're taking a heavy cut, you can get very large chips. So the threat is you don't want this to clog up. So as I recall reading a very old article on the Thien or Thien baffle, this is the input here. You want the thick part to be right where the input is for the airstream, so that although there might be turbulence in there, hopefully they've settled out by the time you reach this area over here, and then you start to get dust dropping out. And I'm planning on using a threaded rod here to connect this. So I used this piece of paper. It's just cut into a square to kind of give me an idea on where I might orient the 4 posts to hold the baffle from the top. And I think that's a good orientation, like so. I mark the holes. I'm going to cheat this one in about 1 inch just to keep it out of the main airstream. And then I have to transfer these holes to the baffle itself, because that's how I'm going to drill the holes. So I drew a line straight across in line with these 2 holes here, and I marked the perimeter. So now I can orient the baffle where I want it and put this in place. And by putting this across where these 2 marks are, like so, I can get a pretty good idea where the square is supposed to sit. Something like so. Then I can mark these 4 holes, and they should be pretty close to the holes directly underneath them. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to cheat this one in 1 inch or so. By using the ruler, I can reference off this outer edge to make sure it's more or less centered. Put a coat of waterborne polyurethane finish on all the wooden surfaces. Just slathering it on. I have lock washers down here on fender washers, and then there's the threaded rod, and I have double nuts up here to lock at about 7.5 inches from here to here. And we put fender washers on here, and then 4 more fender washers and the lock nuts. This center pickup fits quite well, and I just caulked that seam, and it's screwed in place with 4 screws. Well, I filled this whole gap area with hot melt glue, and it seems rock solid. Time will tell. Also took the time to put a little aluminum tape on the inside of the seam just for good measure. I just want to see if this setup can handle the amount of pressure put out by the blower. Well, the blower still has a tendency to lift this lid, so I have a couple clamps just holding the lid on. To first approximation, this seems to be working pretty well. I still have a plethora of air leaks, but I think this is ready for the next step. A little bit of sawdust around this ring in the hose. I take that off. You can see a little bit of dust around the rim. And there's a small amount of sawdust in the bucket. Didn't really see any coming out of this port. I have this EPDM rubber. I'm going to cover these discontinuities with silver aluminum tape. Hedge my bets to keep turbulence down. The way DeWalt does it, there's a ring here with a slot and a hole on this end, and it goes on this way. You slide this tab over a pin on this side, and there's a pin over here that you can push in and out. And some people have commented that this is relatively fragile, especially when you have big heavy pipes and tubes and hoses hanging off of it. So I took the time to create this bracket, and it's just held on with magnets. They're not glued on or anything at the moment. I've got some steel brackets here that hook on the top of the cart, and magnetically it attaches on, and it's adjustable. Down here there's a pivot point, and up here there's a pivot point and an extension. And my thoughts are I'll just put this on here and let this cradle support the pipe to take some of the weight off of that joint. And being magnetic, this is reversible, and similarly hang it off this end. Well, I think things are looking pretty good. I put a new length of pipe in here, a single piece. The flow's going in the right direction for the fittings, and I replaced the clamps with these dryer clamps that are thumb screw tightening, which is a little more convenient. This is supported. It's going into my barrel cyclone dust collector, and then this is going up to my dust collection port in the ceiling. I've discovered that with the central dust collection turned on, the planer doesn't lift the lid, so I don't need to clamp that down. And when I run the planer, I don't seem to get a lot of chips coming out. I'm going to do a couple tests and show it to you guys. Well, I just ran a few passes, and to be honest, I didn't see a hint of any sawdust coming out the back. It is a pretty good setup for using this inside my shop without making much of a mess at all. So, success, finally. Well, you know how life goes. Every project turns into an adventure, which is why I tend to do series of videos, and this guy was no exception. The first thing I tried to do was create a nifty little cyclone dust collector that fits underneath it, and that was an epic fail. Definitely want to check out that video so you don't make the same mistakes I made. I ended up with this cyclone dust collector, which, in conjunction with additional ductwork and dust collection, works like a champ. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Hope you got something out of this. Please do me a favor, like, subscribe, give me some feedback, let me know what you think, and keep your eyes out for the next one.